Illegal immigration, political stunts, and a senator trying to play a hero all in a day's work, but only to get completely owned by the Trump administration. Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen flew to El Salvador in a dramatic attempt to free Kilmar Garcia. Now he's the MS-13 gang affiliate and illegal immigrant who's now sitting in a mega prison in El Salvador. At least that's where he's supposed to be. But Donald Trump, he saw right through it, and he lit up Van Hollen on social media on his Truth Social post saying, Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland looked like a fool yesterday standing in El Salvador begging for attention from the fake news media or anyone. Grandstander in all caps. Chris Bedford is here with more. So, I mean, look at this political stunt that we see, right? Is this just another way of trying to bash the Trump administration, all while using just, this stick figure of oh no, the illegal immigrants, they're supposed to be nice and friendly.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is. And it's just, I probably haven't seen a public stunt faceplant as hard since my pal and a friend, Eric Bolling, put ketchup on his hands to talk about how Obama had blood on it and nobody got it. This is just an unbelievable kind of level, and it's significantly more important. I'm just making fun of Eric there, that he would go and leave his constituents, leave Maryland behind, go to a foreign country, post TikTok videos about it, post on Twitter about it, post on Instagram about it, to go to a prison to demand the release of someone who's not one of his citizens, someone who's been affiliated with the gang, someone who an immigration judge and an immigration appeals court has found is affiliated with the gang, someone who is not one of his constituents. I mean, that's just to get down to it. And at the same time, you've got a woman, mother of 5, Maryland citizen, who is beaten to death in a really awful, gruesome way, who is raped and who's murdered right near her home, leaving the children without a mother, leaving a grieving parents behind, and they only get a press release in response at the same time. It's a perfect kind of mix just to show you where his priorities are. So you got to sit back. You got to wonder, who is this for? Who is he talking to? Is this for all of the Hispanic constituents of Maryland? There are a bunch. But it doesn't seem like that's actually the case. Because if you look at all of his videos, the subtitles of the English speaking are English subtitles. They're not Spanish subtitles. No one on his staff is trying to reach their Hispanic constituents, the other illegal immigrants, show look where he stands, look what he's doing. This is for Democratic white women. This entire thing. It's as if they haven't learned a single aspect of what the American people want. And this is like a broader issue for Democrats that I was talking about with my wife last night, is they feel the need still, like it's 2017, to simply resist every single thing that Donald Trump does. Like we were talking about last night, whether it's try to figure out the causes of autism, whether it's deport illegal gang members. And the issue with that strategy today is that the reason Donald Trump has been elected again, brought back after people knew exactly who he was, and the reason why you've basically not come across a single person who voted for Donald Trump who now regrets it, is because those policies are extremely popular. The American people support those policies. Foreign aid cutting, they support that. Now, Trump's polls look different when we talk about tariffs, and I think that's a failure of messaging on the administration. But on illegal immigrant deportation, on doing something about figuring out where autism's coming from, on breaking down getting rid of some of the foreign aid and cutting waste and bringing back efficiency to government. These are massively popular issues. And for Democrats to have this knee-jerk reaction of, well, if you're for it, I'm against it. And not only am I against it, but I'm going to social media TikTok it. I'm going to fly all the way down to El Salvador and you're going to pay for it. And these are my constituents, the foreigners of the world. I've long written that Democrats care more about foreigners than Americans. Not all Democrats, but a lot of their politicians care more about foreigners than they do about their actual Americans. I could not, if someone had submitted this as a Saturday Night Live skit to me and I was in charge, I would have said, this is too cheesy. It's too on the head. It's too on the nail. You got to come up with something a little more subtle to show my point here that they actually care more about foreigners than this. But I guess Chris Van Hollen lacks that subtlety.
Yeah. Subtlety is one thing. Living in a delusional fantasy world is another. And that's what I'm curious about your thoughts here. I mean, okay, so this is for what? Who is this stunt for? You're saying, look, this is for Democratic white women. And it's the same thing we've seen since at least 2017, as you point out. But we're getting to the point now where, Scott Adams famously said everyone's watching two movies in America, right? I mean, they're seeing the same screen, but the two movies are playing in their heads. And we're getting to the point now, though, where it's not as divided, I don't feel like, because of what you just said. You're getting to 80-20 issues. And so now we have a segment of the society that seems, I mean, I know people say this and it's a platitude, but really seem impervious to, facts, logic, and reason. This is because what's going on here is they chose the wrong example, right? They chose the wrong guy to make the issue about. And we knew they're going to do this. They're going to do more of it. They're going to find examples that become the victims that everyone's supposed to feel sorry for, and then decry the policy accordingly. They picked the wrong guy here, and pretty much everyone there's lots of people on the left who will say, well, whoa, okay, this isn't just about this guy, and they're walking it back. So the feeling that I get is it's like an increasingly impenetrable bubble among a certain subset of the populace that is living in a delusional fantasy world where they're just grabbing onto images and half-truths and just going with it all out, right? Theater kid style. And so I have to ask, if you think that that's roughly the case, longer term, is this going to work? Does this get them, does it jumpstart something and they get BLM 2.0 again? Or is this just going to really throw them further into the hole?
So I think Scott Adams is correct in that so many people, especially who he interacts with on Twitter and elsewhere in politics, who are super politically engaged, are watching different movies. But the reality is that most of the country doesn't even have the TV on.
Right.
They're at work. They're doing other things. It is talk to your friends and family who you went to school with, people who you didn't meet along your career in politics. You don't talk politics or interact with every day. They're smart people, capable people who are just going about their normal lives, and ask them to identify Speaker Mike Johnson, and they probably actually won't be able to do it because they don't care. So they're not watching the movie at all. And Democrats need to be reaching those people. That's who Donald Trump actually reached for the first time. And Donald Trump, or Republicans previously have been unable to do it largely. That's why Donald Trump beat all but I think 2 Republican senators in the vote count by a large amount in the different states that they were in. He did significantly better even than winning Republican senators because he tapped into an audience and a voter base that didn't actually come out. Democrats, they figured out through pretty serious testing and calling millions and millions of people and doing multiple interviews with them over the last year, they turned out their rabid supporters. They actually did come out. It was the normal people who didn't vote for them, the people who ended up going for the GOP, and the people maybe even just stayed at home who just weren't part of their rabid base. They don't have a rabid base problem. Well, they do, but it's not for voting. The Democratic base is the most politically engaged group of people in the entire country. They are the folks that you drive by on your way to church who have a sign in the town square saying, honk if you hate Donald Trump too. This is how they spend their Sunday. This is how they spend their evenings. They go to these meetings. They go to these events. For vacation, you may be going skiing or taking your family to Disney World. Well, they're going to a march in Washington, D.C. This is their holiday, their church, and everything. You don't need to talk to those people. The Democrats don't need to bring them on board. They think that I'm evil. They think that both of you are evil. They think everyone who's watching is evil. They're never going to try and convince us. They're watching an entirely different movie. They think that our movie is evil and Hitler and all this and that, and they're not going to change sides. Democrats don't need them. But for some reason, people like Van Hollen just keep on doubling down on those people, those folks. And I think the Democrats have a real problem with the folks that they have really promoted over the last couple of years. These 5 years or so of moral crusade that have been going on in Washington and across the country, this great awakening, this puritanism for kind of crazy and evil left-wing ideas, has swept a lot of people into power and empowered a lot of Democrats and folks who otherwise wouldn't be. And people predicted this. Moderate Republicans and liberal Republicans were terrified when the Tea Party wave happened. They said, you guys are empowering folks who are going to be around for a long time. The Ted Cruzes, the Rand Pauls, the Mike Lees, they're going to be a problem. They're going to destroy this party. And I think they were wrong. I thought they were wrong at the time, and I think time has borne that out. The Democrats went through a similar thing to the Tea Party, but they actually are going to be poison for the party. They are going to be toxic. When your biggest stars are the people who fed off of this sort of stuff, who've catered to that Harvard faculty wants and desires, who've led these intifadas, who've defended the mass protesters and mobs and attackers and rioters in the streets, you talk to a smaller and smaller and smaller subset of society each time. I mean, the trick to being a successful liberal, as Barack Obama has shown, is to not talk like one. Read books about Ronald Reagan and talk like him. Well, you can completely change the country if you want, as long as you get up there with an American flag pin and say, we're all in this together, we're all a country together, I'm trying to unite us. They're not talking like that. They're doubling down. They think that their moral piety has allowed them to feel like they are untouchable, that anyone who disagrees with them is, quote, on the wrong side of history. And yeah, Matt, I think that's a serious danger to them electorally down the line.
Well, I'm not evil. I'm just a savage, Bedford. All right. Keep that in mind. When you look, I'm old enough to remember, though, right? If you were talking about Democratic white women, we can go back to when they shipped in all of the illegals to Martha's Vineyard, and they lasted all of 48 hours there, right? Within that amount of time, they came, they saw, they were kicked out, they were gone, right? So when you actually see Democrats, when they come into their own area, when they have the illegals that they have to deal with themselves on their own territory, they don't want to deal with it, right? So what is this now political theater that we're dealing with? How is this going to hurt the Democrats in the long run if people are actually going to pay attention to this issue right now?
If you want to see two different worlds of Democratic voters, come to where I live, or come to Capitol Hill where I lived for years and years and years. Walk through those neighborhoods and you'll see all of these murals on the walls of these important civil rights leaders, these important Black leaders, these important liberal icons. Of course, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is going to be painted on some of these walls, massive pictures of her. My favorite one of her is in Annapolis, where she's wearing this African ceremonial necklace for some reason that's never actually been explained to me. And then keep on walking and cross the bridge, whether over the Potomac River or over the Anacostia River, depending on which neighborhood you're in, and go into the bad part of town. There's a lot of Democratic voters there, but they're not all white, like the wealthy parts. They're all Black, and they have been for generations. These are another constituency of Democratic votes, and you'll see none of these murals. You won't see any of these leaders painted on the wall, these absolute heroes that white Democrats with all of their kind of crazy and psychotic policies think that they're advocating in the name of. You're not going to see that sort of stuff, that level of activism at all, because those are the Democratic voters who are just working. And they're also the ones who are completely left behind. They're the ones that Democrats don't want in their neighborhoods. They don't. Tucker used to talk about this a lot. A lot of the ruling class and elite left-wingers don't follow the advice that they give to other people's kids. All their kids go to prep school. All their kids get the great grades. All their kids stay out of trouble with the law. They don't actually do these same things that they preach constantly. They live a different life. They live in alternate universes. And you're seeing right now what was going on for a long time in the GOP, and it's finally beginning to change, which is you can't have a party where the base voters you rely on have completely different needs and completely different wants than the people at the top of the party, the intellectual class, the elites of the party. The Democrats have that right now. For my entire life before this, that was a Republican problem, not a Democratic problem, but it's changed because of how far they've pushed with this woke stuff and how much they've pushed with this anti-policing stuff and all this other craziness. And I don't envy them.
So well said. So well said. I just want a little asterisk on the Democratic white women. I want to throw this out there. Jill says, it's they're somehow hypocrites for getting rid of people within 48 hours, illegals coming into Martha's Vineyard. But I remember what they said at the time. They weren't hypocrites at all. Remember, the Democratic white women who kicked them out with the National Guard, the hell out of Martha's Vineyard within 48 hours, they said that they had been enriched.
That's right. That's right.
I was on Cape Cod with my family shortly afterwards. You could see Martha's Vineyard from where we were. And that's what the conversation was at the Catholic Church that weekend, was about how enriching an experience it had been. And but everyone was gone by that point. I think, were on an Air Force base by then.
Well, Bedford, pour some martinis this weekend. Lent, you're gonna be ready to go this weekend.
We're almost in the clear.
And we will see you in Washington, D.C. next week. Thanks so much for your time, Bedford.
Can't wait, and have a happy Easter.
All right, happy Easter to you.